The morning sky over New York City turned purple at exactly 7:42 a.m. on a cold Tuesday in December. Sarah Chen was drinking her coffee when the color change caught her attention through the kitchen window. She set down her mug and walked closer to the glass. The purple deepened, spreading like ink dropped into water. Then the ships appeared. They emerged from what looked like tears in the fabric of reality itself. Massive triangular vessels, each one larger than Manhattan, descended through the atmosphere with terrifying silence. There were hundreds of them. Sarah counted 12 just above her neighborhood before she stopped counting. Her hands started shaking. Her phone buzzed with notifications, but she could not look away from the sky. Across the planet, 7 billion humans experienced the same moment of frozen terror. In Tokyo, rush hour traffic stopped completely. People abandoned their cars on highways and stood on the rooftops of their vehicles, staring upward with mouths hanging open. In London, Parliament was in session when the ships appeared over Westminster. Every politician went silent. The session was forgotten as elected officials pressed their faces against windows like frightened children. The ships positioned themselves over every major city on Earth within 90 minutes. They moved with impossible precision, as if following a plan perfected over centuries. No communication came from them. No demands. No explanations. They simply waited in the sky, their shadows covering entire metropolitan areas. General Marcus Thompson stood in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by screens showing satellite imagery of the invasion. His military career spanned 35 years. He had fought in 3 wars and made decisions that affected millions of lives. But nothing had prepared him for this. The scale was overwhelming. Conservative estimates suggested more than 800 vessels of various sizes now occupied Earth's atmosphere. "What do we know?" he asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Colonel Jessica Wright, the Pentagon's lead intelligence analyst, pulled up holographic displays of the alien fleet. Her expertise was supposed to be human conflicts, not extraterrestrial invasions. She had been working since 4 a.m. when the first anomalies appeared on deep space sensors. Sleep deprivation made her eyes red, but her mind remained sharp. "The ships are constructed from materials we cannot identify," she reported. "Our spectrographic analysis shows elements that do not exist on the periodic table. Their propulsion systems produce no heat signature, no radiation, nothing we can detect. They violated every known law of physics just by entering our atmosphere." General Thompson rubbed his forehead. "Weapons assessment? Unknown, sir. We have not observed any offensive capabilities yet. But the structural analysis suggests these vessels are built for war. The design philosophy matches nothing in human engineering, but certain patterns are universal. Reinforced hull sections, defensive positioning of key systems, modular bays that could house anything from troops to weapons platforms." The President of the United States entered the room at that moment. Elena Rodriguez had been in office for 2 years. Her approval ratings had been steady. Her administration focused on domestic policy and economic recovery. First contact had never been on her agenda. She looked tired and scared, but she carried herself with the dignity her office required. "Give me options," she said simply. General Thompson turned to face her. "Madam President, our conventional forces are useless against these ships. Preliminary modeling suggests nuclear weapons would be equally ineffective. The shielding technology they possess operates on principles we cannot understand, let alone counter. So we cannot fight them," the President said. "No, ma'am. Not with anything we currently possess." The room fell silent. On the screens, footage from around the world showed humanity's reaction. Some cities had descended into panic. Looting and violence erupted in several major urban centers. Other populations remained eerily calm, as if waiting for instructions that would never come. Religious gatherings formed spontaneously in public spaces. Some people prayed for salvation. Others prayed for a quick end. Dr. Raj Patel was in his laboratory at MIT when the ships arrived. Unlike most of the world, he did not freeze in terror. His mind immediately began working on the problem. Raj had spent his career studying theoretical physics, specifically the intersection of quantum mechanics and space-time manipulation. His colleagues called his theories impractical. Funding agencies rejected his proposals as science fiction. But watching those ships tear holes in reality confirmed everything he had suspected. He called his research assistant, a young woman named Maria Santos who had stuck with him when everyone else left. "Get to the lab," he said. "Bring everything you have on quantum field destabilization, Dr. Patel. Have you seen the sky? I have seen it. That is why you need to hurry." The first communication from the alien fleet came exactly 48 hours after their arrival. It broadcast simultaneously on every electronic device on Earth. Televisions, phones, computers, even old radios suddenly displayed or transmitted the same message. The voice was synthesized but clear, speaking in every language simultaneously. Species designation, human classification, primitive, resource value of your planet, significant. Your civilization will be processed within standard galactic cycle. Resistance is mathematically futile. Cooperation will result in reduced suffering during transition period. This is your only notification. The message repeated 3 times before cutting off. Then silence returned. In homes and offices and shelters around the world, humanity absorbed what they had just heard. The aliens had not come to make friends. They had not come to share technology or extend diplomatic hands. They viewed Earth as a resource to be extracted and humanity as an obstacle to be processed. The word processed echoed in collective consciousness like a death sentence. President Rodriguez addressed the world that evening. Her speech was broadcast globally, translated into every major language. She stood behind a simple podium, the American flag behind her replaced with a flag bearing the emblem of a united Earth, hastily designed in the hours after the alien message. They have told us we are primitive, she said. They have told us resistance is futile. They believe we will simply accept our fate and cooperate with our own extinction. She paused, letting her words settle. They are wrong. The speech lasted only 10 minutes, but it marked a turning point. Nations that had been rivals for centuries suddenly found themselves on the same side. Military leaders who had spent careers planning wars against each other now shared intelligence and resources. Scientists who had competed for funding now collaborated openly. The alien threat had done something no human diplomat could achieve. It had united the species. But unity alone would not be enough. Everyone knew that. The technological gap between humanity and the invaders was not years or decades. It was centuries, possibly millennia. Human weapons were toys compared to whatever power those ships possessed. Human science was cave paintings next to their apparent mastery of space-time itself. Sarah Chen watched the president's speech on her phone, sitting in the corner of her darkened apartment. The shadow of an alien ship had covered her neighborhood since the arrival. Sunlight had not touched her windows in 2 days. She thought about her parents in San Francisco, about her brother in the military, about all the ordinary life she had taken for granted. She was a software engineer at a small technology company. Her work had always seemed unimportant in the grand scheme of things. But something in the president's words sparked a small flame of defiance in her chest. They were calling humanity primitive. They expected surrender. Sarah opened her laptop and began typing. She did not know if her skills would matter. She did not know if anything she could do would make a difference. But she refused to simply wait for processing. If humanity was going to face extinction, she would face it fighting. Across the planet, billions of humans made similar decisions in similar moments. The doom was real. The odds were impossible. But something in the human spirit rejected acceptance. Something ancient and stubborn and uniquely human began to awaken. The aliens had studied Earth from a distance. They had analyzed human technology and found it laughable. They had predicted swift compliance based on their experience with dozens of other species. But they had made a critical error in their assessment. They had never encountered a species that refused to accept mathematical reality. They had never invaded a planet full of creatures that chose defiance over logic. They had never processed a civilization that would rather burn than bend. And they were about to discover why that mattered. The underground bunker beneath Geneva had been built during the Cold War, designed to protect world leaders from nuclear attack. Now it served as humanity's command center. Representatives from every nation gathered in the cavernous main hall, their usual political divisions forgotten. The alien fleet had given them 30 days before beginning what they called processing. 27 of those days remained. Dr. Raj Patel stood before the assembly, his presentation displayed on a massive screen behind him. He had not slept more than 6 hours in the past week. His theories, once dismissed as impossible, had become humanity's only hope. The irony was not lost on him. The aliens traveled through what I call quantum folds, he explained, drawing diagrams that most of the politicians could not understand. They are not breaking the laws of physics. They are exploiting laws we have not discovered yet. Their ships do not fly. They bend space around themselves and let the universe carry them. General Thompson, who had been coordinating global military efforts, raised his hand. Doctor, with respect, understanding how they travel does not help us fight them. Raj nodded slowly. You are correct, General. But understanding their technology reveals something critical. They are dependent on stable quantum fields to maintain their ships and weapons. Without those fields, their advanced materials become unstable. Their vessels would collapse. A murmur spread through the assembly. Hope, small and fragile, flickered in tired eyes. Can we disrupt these fields? President Rodriguez asked. In theory, yes. Their technology creates precise quantum signatures. If we could generate opposing signatures at sufficient amplitude, we could destabilize their systems. Raj hesitated. But the energy required would be enormous. We are talking about global-scale electromagnetic pulses combined with precisely tuned frequency generators. Every power plant on Earth working together might produce enough energy for a single disruption wave. The Chinese Premier Li Wei leaned forward. His country had suffered terribly in the first days of occupation. Several smaller cities had already been processed as demonstrations. The reports from those areas had stopped entirely. You were saying we could have one chance, one attack, and if it fails, we lose all our power infrastructure. Yes, Raj admitted. One chance. The assembly fell silent, betting everything on a single theoretical weapon developed in weeks. The odds were terrible, but terrible odds were better than none. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen had joined an underground network of programmers and hackers who had formed in the days following the invasion. They called themselves the Ghost Protocol, operating from basements and bunkers, connected through encrypted channels the aliens had not bothered to monitor. 2. The invaders' human digital networks were primitive curiosities, not worth surveillance. That underestimation became their first advantage. Sarah worked on analyzing alien communication patterns. The invaders used quantum-encrypted signals, but even quantum encryption left traces. Her team had captured fragments of alien data during routine transmissions. Most of it was incomprehensible, but patterns emerged. The aliens operated on rigid schedules. Their fleet movements followed precise algorithms. Their processing procedures were systematic and predictable. They are bureaucrats, Sarah said during a video call with her team. Advanced, terrifying bureaucrats, but bureaucrats nonetheless. They follow procedures. They do not adapt quickly. A young man named David Park, a former game developer from Seoul, responded, "That means if we can disrupt their procedures, throw off their schedules, we can create chaos in their operations." Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks. Exactly. Across the Atlantic, Colonel Wright had assembled a special forces team unlike any in history. Soldiers from every nation trained together, sharing techniques and tactics. Russians taught close-quarters combat. Americans provided advanced weapons training. Chinese specialists offered cyber warfare expertise. British SAS officers contributed demolition techniques. Israeli Mossad agents shared intelligence gathering methods. They were preparing for something no one had ever attempted. A boarding action against an alien vessel. Human weapons could not penetrate alien shields, but Dr. Patel's research suggested the shields only activated against approaching objects above a certain velocity. Walking soldiers might simply pass through. The theory was untested. Volunteers were told their survival chances were below 10%. Every seat on the assault team filled within hours. Soldiers fought for the right to participate in what might be a suicide mission. The aliens continued their demonstrations during these preparations. Each day they selected a population center and began processing. The procedure was horrifyingly efficient. Massive harvesting drones descended from the main ships. They gathered biological material without discrimination. Animals, plants, and humans were all collected. Within hours, thriving cities became empty. WASTELANDS. Dr. Alina Vasquez, a xenobiologist hastily recruited from Cambridge, studied footage of the processing operations. What she discovered changed everything. They are not just harvesting resources, she reported to the Command Council. They are collecting genetic material. Then they are sequences. Every species they encounter gets catalogued and preserved. Their ships contain what appear to be massive biological archives. Why does that matter? General Thompson asked. Lena pulled up enhanced images. Because it means they value diversity. They are not destroying life for fuel. They are collecting it, preserving it in some form, and that suggests something important about their psychology. President Rodriguez understood immediately. They see themselves as preservers, perhaps even saviors in their own minds. They are not conquering us. They are cataloging us before we destroy ourselves. Exactly, Alina confirmed. Their historical data, which we have partially decrypted, shows similar operations on dozens of worlds. They target civilizations they believe are approaching self-destruction through war or environmental collapse. They consider themselves gardeners of the galaxy, transplanting life before it dies. This revelation sparked intense debate. Some argued it changed nothing. Humanity was still being erased regardless of alien motivations. Others saw an opportunity. If the aliens believed they were performing a service, perhaps negotiations were possible. A small faction, growing louder each day, argued for surrender. Let the aliens preserve humanity in their archives. At least some form of human existence would continue. This faction included several prominent politicians and religious leaders who had concluded resistance was genuine suicide. The debate threatened to fracture humanity's fragile unity. Private Maria Reyes was a 23 communications specialist from Puerto Rico. She had joined the military to pay for college. Alien invasion had never been in her career planning, but she found herself at the center of a critical mission, establishing communication with the alien fleet. Using theories from Dr. Patel and decryption work from the Ghost Protocol, Maria's team had constructed a crude quantum transmitter. It could send messages in formats the aliens would recognize. The question was what to say. After endless committee meetings produced nothing but arguments, Maria made a decision. She composed a simple message and transmitted it without authorization. "We understand your purpose. We reject it. Our species chooses to live or die on our own terms. You have no right to decide our fate. We will fight you with everything we possess. This is not ignorance. This is choice." The response came within minutes. The alien fleet, which had maintained rigid silence since their initial announcement, suddenly directed a transmission at Maria's location. "Your species has produced individuals of unusual psychological patterns. This response does not match predicted behavioral models. Query: are you a representative of your species or an aberration?" Maria felt her heart pounding as she typed her reply. I am neither special nor unusual. I am exactly what humans are. We are all aberrations by your standards. That is what you fail to understand. The aliens did not respond for several hours. When they did, the message was directed to the entire planet. Processing timeline extended for additional analysis. Human psychological patterns require further study. New timeline, 90 standard cycles. Humanity had gained 60 additional days. The news spread like wildfire through the command structure. Maria's unauthorized transmission had bought precious time. The aliens were confused by human behavior, by refusal to follow predicted patterns. Their models, refined through countless harvesting operations, did not account for species that chose defiance when surrender was clearly optimal. Dr. Patel used the extra time to refine his quantum disruption technology. Colonel Wright expanded and trained additional boarding teams. Sarah Chen and the Ghost Protocol worked to infiltrate alien communication networks more deeply. The global power grid was quietly modified to support the massive energy requirement of the planned disruption wave. And Maria Reyes, the communications specialist who had changed everything with one unauthorized message, was promoted and assigned to psychological warfare. Her job was simple but crucial. Keep the aliens confused. Keep them questioning their models. Keep them uncertain about what humans would do next. She proved remarkably good at it. The countdown continued. 90 days until processing resumed. Humanity worked with desperate intensity. 60 days remained when Captain Yuki Tanaka led the first boarding mission against an alien vessel. Her team consisted of 40 soldiers from 12 nations. They approached the target ship on foot through the ruins of what had once been downtown Sydney. The massive triangular vessel hovered 300 meters above the devastated landscape, casting its shadow across miles of empty streets. The alien shields, as Dr. Patel had predicted, did not activate against slow-moving organic targets. The soldiers reached the hull without incident, but the surface presented an unexpected challenge. It was not metal. It was something organic, warm and pulsing like living tissue. Several soldiers hesitated at the contact. Miyuki ordered through her communication link, "We do not have time for discomfort." They found an entry point that resembled a massive wound in the hull. Whether it was damaged or a natural opening remained unclear. The interior confirmed what Dr. Vasquez had suspected. The alien ships were partially biological. Corridors pulsed with rhythmic energy. The walls responded to touch, contracting and expanding in unsettling patterns. The air was thick with unfamiliar smells that triggered nausea in several team members. YUK. I pressed forward. Their mission was simple. Gather intelligence, identify weaknesses, and return. Combat was specifically forbidden unless absolutely necessary. They encountered their first aliens 20 minutes into the ship. The creatures were nothing like science fiction had imagined. They had no humanoid form, no recognizable faces. They appeared as shifting masses of interconnected organisms, each component performing specialized functions. Some parts moved independently, while others remained connected. Communication between them happened through visible pulses of light and what seemed like chemical releases. The soldiers froze, weapons raised. The alien collective paused its movement. For a long moment, neither group acted. Then the aliens simply continued moving, passing within meters of the human soldiers without apparent interest. The boarding team was either unrecognized as a threat or considered so insignificant that response was unnecessary. "They barely noticed us," Sergeant Chenwei whispered, "like we were insects." Yuki filed that observation carefully. Underestimation was an advantage she intended to exploit. Back in Geneva, Dr. Patel reviewed the data transmitted by the boarding team. His quantum disruption device was nearly complete, but calibration required precise information about alien technology. The biological nature of the ships changed everything. "Living systems," he muttered, reviewing cellular scans transmitted from the vessel. "Their technology is grown, not built. This explains the impossible materials. They are not elements from a periodic table. There are biological compounds we have never encountered." Maria Santos, his assistant, looked up from her own analysis. "Does that change the disruption approach?" Raj thought carefully. "Living systems might actually be more vulnerable. Biological processes depend on precise chemical balances. If we can disrupt those balances at a quantum level, we might trigger system-wide failures." He paused, running calculations in his head. "But it also means our attack might be more like an infection than an explosion. Slower, but potentially more thorough." Sarah Chen received the same data through Ghost Protocol networks. Her team had made significant progress infiltrating alien communication systems. They could now monitor routine transmissions across the fleet, though most remained incomprehensible. But patterns emerged. The aliens communicated in structured bursts that repeated at predictable intervals. Status reports, orders, confirmations. "They are incredibly organized," David Park noted during their latest session. "Every ship reports to a central command. Every action is logged and approved. Nothing happens spontaneously." Sarah saw the weakness immediately. That means disrupting central command would create chaos throughout the fleet. "They are not designed for independent action." "But where is central command?" David asked. We have not identified a flagship or command structure. Sarah pulled up visualizations of their intercepted data. I have been wondering about that. The communication pattern suggests command signals originate from multiple sources, but they all align toward a single location in orbit. Not a ship, something else. Further analysis revealed an artificial structure in high Earth orbit that had escaped initial detection. It was small compared to the main vessels, but it emitted command signals that coordinated the entire fleet. Destroying or capturing it could potentially cripple the invasion. General Thompson received this intelligence with cautious optimism. A target we can actually reach. The question is how. Humanity had a small fleet of spacecraft, mostly research vessels and old military satellites, nothing capable of challenging alien vessels. But the command structure was lightly defended. The aliens apparently never expected any resistance from a primitive species. A plan began to form. Maria Reyes continued her psychological operations. Each day, she transmitted messages designed to confuse alien behavioral models. She asked philosophical questions they could not answer. She sent contradictory statements from fictional human factions. She claimed human society was about to surrender, then immediately transmitted defiant challenges. The aliens responded with increasing frequency. Their messages revealed growing uncertainty. Human species displays contradictory behavioral patterns. Probability matrices cannot establish reliable predictions. Request additional analysis time from Central Archive. This request was denied. The aliens operated on schedules that spanned centuries. Deviation from established timelines was apparently unusual and required significant justification. The fleet was ordered to proceed with processing on the established date, but Maria noticed something important in the exchange. The alien command structure was not monolithic. Different factions held different priorities. The fleet commanders wanted efficiency. The Archive faction wanted comprehensive data collection. The Oversight Division wanted adherence to established procedures. She immediately shared this intelligence with the Command Council. They have politics, she reported. Bureaucracy, competing interests. We can exploit their internal divisions. President Rodriguez approved an expanded psychological operations campaign. Human transmissions now targeted specific alien factions with tailored messages. Archive received data suggesting human genetic patterns were unique and worth extended study. Fleet received contradictory intelligence suggesting human resistance was both weak and impossibly strong. Oversight received fake communications, suggesting procedural violations by other factions. The aliens began arguing among themselves. Meanwhile, Yuki Tanaka led her second boarding mission. This time, the target was a processing vessel that had been observed harvesting material from an abandoned city in South America. The mission was not reconnaissance. It was sabotage. Her team penetrated the ship using the same approach as before. The aliens again ignored them. But this time, the soldiers carried devices designed by Dr. Patel to disrupt biological systems. Small generators that emitted carefully tuned frequencies. Yuki planted the first device in what appeared to be a central nervous cluster. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The organic walls spasmed violently. Systems that had been functioning smoothly began failing. The aliens finally noticed the human intruders. What followed was the first direct combat between human soldiers and alien organisms. The creatures responded to threats by rapidly reforming, combining smaller units into larger defensive structures. They moved with terrifying speed and coordination, but they died when shot. Human weapons, dismissed as primitive toys, proved effective against biological targets. Bullets tore through organic mass. Explosives disrupted the chemical communications that held the collective organisms together. The aliens had designed their systems to resist energy weapons and shield-penetrating technology. They had never considered simple kinetic force. Yuki. I lost 18 soldiers in 30 minutes of fighting, but the processing vessel stopped functioning. Its harvesting operations ceased. The remaining soldiers escaped as the ship began dying around them. It was the first successful military action against the alien fleet. News of the victory spread through humanity like electricity. Citizens who had been preparing for death suddenly dared to hope. Factories increased production. Volunteer rates for military service tripled. The psychological shift was measurable and immediate. The aliens noticed too. Their transmissions showed something unprecedented. Concerned human resistance more effective than projected. Biological vulnerability to kinetic weapons not anticipated. Request permission for tactical adjustment. Again, permission was denied. Procedures existed for reasons. The schedule must be maintained. Sarah Chen intercepted this exchange and immediately recognized its significance. They cannot adapt quickly. Their command structure prevents rapid tactical changes. If we strike fast enough and hard enough, they will not be able to respond effectively. Dr. Patel's quantum disruption device reached completion on the 51st day before processing. Testing was impossible. They would only know if it worked when they activated it. The plan came together with desperate precision. The space mission would target the command structure in orbit. Boarding teams would simultaneously attack priority vessels using the biological disruption technology. The final countdown began when the alien fleet announced processing would resume in 72 hours. Their extended analysis period had produced nothing but confusion. Human behavior remained unpredictable. Their models remained broken, but the schedule demanded action. Humanity had 72 hours to execute every element of their desperate plan in orbit. 3 converted cargo spacecraft approached the alien command structure. The vessels had been stripped of everything unnecessary and loaded with explosive materials and Dr. Patel's quantum disruptors. The crews were volunteers who understood they would not be returning home. 27 men and women from 9 countries, chosen for their technical skills and their willingness to die for a chance at victory. Commander James Oak, a Nigerian astronaut who had spent 4 years on the International Space Station, led the orbital assault. His calm voice guided the approach through the radio silence they maintained to avoid detection. Visual contact with target, he reported when they reached striking distance. Structure is smaller than expected, heavily connected to the main fleet through visible energy conduits. Those connections must be our priority. The alien command structure resembled a geometric crystal, each face pulsing with light that flowed toward the surrounding fleet. Okonkwo understood immediately why it had escaped initial detection. It did not look artificial. It looked like a natural formation, something that might have existed in space for millions of years on Earth. 40 boarding teams prepared for simultaneous assault. Captain Yuki Tanaka commanded the coordinated effort from a mobile command center in the Swiss Alps. Each team had specific targets: processing vessels, defensive platforms, and what intelligence suggested were energy distribution nodes. All teams, final equipment check, she ordered. Synchronized timing devices. We strike in exactly 6 hours, not before, not after. Sarah Chen watched the countdown from a bunker beneath what had once been Boston. The Ghost Protocol had prepared their greatest deception. Thousands of fake transmissions would flood alien communication networks at the moment of attack. False orders, contradictory commands, fabricated emergencies. The goal was to create enough confusion to prevent coordinated alien response during the critical first minutes. Everyone ready? She asked her global network of hackers and programmers. Confirmations came from every continent. The Ghost Protocol had grown from a handful of programmers to thousands. They had recruited teenagers and retired engineers, government officials and corporate spies. Anyone with skills and determination had found a place in the network. Maria Reyes transmitted her final psychological message to the alien fleet. She had crafted it carefully, designed to trigger maximum internal conflict. To the Archive faction, we have discovered that Fleet Command has been destroying unique genetic samples to maintain schedule efficiency. Your collection priorities are being sacrificed. To Fleet Command, Archive is transmitting our locations to us in exchange for cooperation. They have betrayed your operations. To Oversight, both factions are violating established procedures. Your authority is being undermined. The aliens could not verify these claims quickly enough. Their communication channels erupted with demands for explanation and clarification. The internal conflict that had been simmering for weeks suddenly boiled over. Dr. Patel sat beside the activation console for his quantum disruption device. The mechanism connected to every power plant on Earth through hastily constructed transmission lines. Activating it would drain global energy reserves. Hospitals had backup generators. Essential services had been warned, but much of the planet would go dark. We will have exactly 1 minute of peak disruption, he reminded the technicians around him. 1 minute to cripple their systems before our power runs out. Everything depends on what happens in that minute. The countdown continued. 6 hours, 5-4, across the planet, humanity waited. Those who knew about the plan prayed for success. Those who did not simply prayed for survival. Families gathered together. Old grudges were forgiven. Final messages were recorded. The species prepared for a moment that would determine its future. Commander Okonkwo positioned his 3 spacecraft around the alien command structure. They had identified the energy conduits connecting it to the fleet. Severing those connections was the first priority. The quantum disruptors they carried would target the structure itself. On my mark, he said, we change everything. At exactly the designated moment, Captain Tanaka gave the order. 40 boarding teams began their assault simultaneously. Human soldiers charged alien vessels across 6 continents. The plan relied on surprise and coordination. They had trained for this moment for weeks. Every movement was synchronized. The aliens were not prepared for this scale of coordinated action. Their models had suggested human military forces would act independently, competing for glory and resources. United action across national boundaries had been calculated as extremely improbable. Their calculations were wrong. Sarah Chen triggered the Ghost Protocol attack. Thousands of fake transmissions flooded alien communication channels. Orders to retreat, orders to advance, reports of massive victories and catastrophic defeats, requests for reinforcement and demands for withdrawal. The alien command network, already stressed by internal conflict, began to fracture. Maria Reyes watched with satisfaction as alien factions turned on each other. Archive vessels stopped supporting fleet operations, prioritizing their collection missions over combat coordination. Oversight began issuing contradictory commands that paralyzed the fleet commanders, unable to receive clear orders, defaulted to independent action that destroyed their coordinated effectiveness. In orbit, Commander Okonkwo gave his final order, TAC. The 3 human spacecraft accelerated toward the alien command structure. They were immediately targeted by defensive systems. Energy beams struck the lead vessel, destroying it instantly. The second vessel was hit moments later. Okonkwo's ship, bringing out the rear, survived long enough to impact the structure. The explosion was visible from Earth. The energy conduits connecting the command structure to the fleet flickered and failed. For the first time since their arrival, the alien vessels lost centralized coordination. Each ship was suddenly operating independently. Without guidance from superior authority, Dr. Patel watched the orbital explosion on his monitors. Now, he said quietly. He activated the quantum disruption device. Every power plant on Earth channeled its output through the global network into Patel's mechanism. The device generated a wave of precisely tuned quantum interference that spread outward at the speed of light. It passed through everything, penetrating matter and energy alike. The effect on alien technology was immediate and catastrophic. Ships that had hovered motionlessly for weeks suddenly shuddered. Their organic systems, dependent on stable quantum fields, began failing. Biological components died. Structural integrity collapsed. Processing drones crashed to the ground. Defensive systems went offline. The lights went out across Earth as the power grid drained completely. But in the darkness, humanity watched alien vessels fall. Captain Tanaka's boarding teams found themselves inside dying ships. Alien organisms that had seemed invincible now struggled to maintain cohesion. The biological disruption devices they carried amplified the effect, spreading death through organic systems like infection. Push forward, she ordered. Do not give them time to recover. Her soldiers fought through collapsing corridors and dying alien masses. They planted additional disruption devices in critical locations. They destroyed everything they could reach. They showed no mercy to an enemy that had planned to harvest their species. Sarah Chen monitored the chaos from her bunker. The Ghost Protocol's fake transmissions were no longer necessary. Real confusion had replaced manufactured chaos. Alien commanders issued desperate orders that went unanswered. Ships that could still function had no idea what to do, but the disruption was not complete. Some vessels had survived, protected by unknown factors. They began recovering, their systems stabilizing. The quantum disruption wave had lasted exactly 60 seconds before Earth's power reserves were exhausted. It had been devastating but not total. The surviving alien vessels turned their attention to the source of the attack. Energy weapons that could devastate cities powered up. Targeting systems focused on the locations of human command centers. Dr. Patel saw the targeting data on his monitors. His bunker had been identified. The aliens were preparing to retaliate. Was it enough? Maria Santos asked, fear evident in her voice. Raj looked at the data. Approximately 30% of the alien fleet had been destroyed or disabled. Another 40% was severely damaged. But the remaining vessels still possessed enough firepower to eliminate human civilization. I do not know, he admitted. The first retaliatory strikes began. Alien weapons targeted military installations and command centers. Geneva was hit. Moscow, Beijing, the infrastructure of human resistance, burned under alien fire. But humanity did not stop fighting. Boarding teams continued their assaults on damaged vessels. Pilots flew suicide missions against weapons platforms. Ground forces engaged, crashed alien ships. Even civilians armed themselves and attacked processing drones that had survived the disruption. The aliens had expected surrender after their retaliation began. The retreat signal spread through the surviving alien fleet like a virus of uncertainty. Vessels that had been preparing retaliatory strikes suddenly halted their operations. Ships that had recovered from the quantum disruption began ascending toward orbit. The coordinated assault that would have eliminated human resistance stopped before it truly began. Sarah Chen intercepted the communications that followed. They are arguing. She reported to whatever command structure remained intact. Fleet Command wants to complete processing. Archive is demanding preservation of remaining collection assets. Oversight has declared the entire operation compromised and is ordering withdrawal pending formal review. The bureaucracy that had seemed so dangerous was now saving humanity. That aliens could not agree on what to do next. Each faction prioritized different objectives. Without central command, without clear authority, they defaulted to their individual mandates. Archive vessels were the first to leave. They carried biological samples collected during the invasion and valued that cargo above operational completion. Processing ships followed, their damaged systems unable to continue harvesting efficiently. Fleet Command vessels remained longest, but even they eventually abandoned Earth orbit. When it became clear reinforcement was not coming, within 48 hours of the quantum disruption, the last alien vessel disappeared into the spacefold that had brought them. Humanity had survived. The cost was staggering. Global infrastructure had been devastated. Major cities lay in ruins. Millions had died during processing operations and retaliatory strikes. The power grid remained dark across most of the planet. Food distribution systems had collapsed. Medical services were overwhelmed, but humanity had survived. President Rodriguez addressed the world from a makeshift broadcast station, her face lit by emergency lighting. "We did not win because we were stronger," she said. "We did not win because we were smarter. We won because we refused to accept what every rational calculation told us was inevitable. We won because being human means choosing to fight when fighting makes no sense." Dr. Raj Patel was celebrated as a hero. His quantum disruption device had turned the tide. But he refused most interviews and returned to his laboratory as quickly as possible. The aliens would return eventually. Their archive faction would want to understand how a primitive species had resisted. Their fleet command would want revenge. Humanity needed better defenses. "We bought ourselves time," he told Maria Santos when she asked about the celebrations. "Nothing more. The universe knows about us now. Other species will come. We must be ready." Captain Yuki Tanaka received the highest military honors from 12 nations. Her boarding teams had suffered 70% casualties, but their sacrifices had crippled alien operations during the critical window. She spent months visiting the families of fallen soldiers, ensuring their losses were honored and remembered. They were not brave because they were not afraid, she told a memorial gathering. They were brave because they were terrified and fought anyway. That is what courage means. That is what being human means. Sarah Chen and the Ghost Protocol Network were quietly recruited by every intelligence agency on the planet. They chose instead to remain independent, transforming into a permanent organization dedicated to defending humanity against technological threats. Their skills had proven invaluable. Their independence had allowed rapid adaptation. They would not surrender that advantage to bureaucratic control. Maria Reyes became the public face of humanity's psychological victory. Her unauthorized transmission had bought critical time. Her understanding of alien psychology had exploited their weaknesses. She was offered positions in government and military leadership. She declined them all, preferring to continue her work from the communications station where everything had changed. "The aliens believed they understood us," she explained in a rare interview. "They had models and calculations and centuries of experience, but they could not understand why we fight when fighting is illogical, why we hope when hope is unreasonable, why we love things that will inevitably be lost. These are not weaknesses to be exploited. They are the sources of our strength." Commander James Okonkwo was remembered as humanity's greatest hero. His sacrifice had destroyed the alien command structure and made everything else possible. Memorials were erected on every continent. His name was given to the first warship constructed specifically for planetary defense. The years that followed were difficult. Rebuilding consumed resources and attention. Political conflicts that had been suspended during the invasion slowly Some nations wanted to pool resources for global defense. Others preferred to develop independent capabilities. The unity that had saved humanity frayed as immediate danger faded, but something fundamental had changed. Humans had faced extinction and refused it. They had confronted impossible odds and found ways to fight. They had discovered that their strangest qualities, their irrationality and stubbornness and emotional depth, were not evolutionary mistakes but competitive advantages. The aliens had harvested dozens of species across millennia. Each one had followed predictable patterns. Each one had eventually surrendered when resistance became mathematically futile. Each one had been processed and preserved according to established procedures. Humanity was the first to break that pattern, the first to reject mathematical reality, the first to choose death over preservation. And that changed everything, reports eventually reached Earth that the alien oversight faction had convened an unprecedented review of the failed operation. Their analysis concluded that human psychological patterns represented a previously unknown category of sentient behavior. Standard processing procedures were inadequate for species displaying these characteristics. The archive faction added humans to a special classification, species too unpredictable for standard collection. Their entry in the galactic database included a warning that would be transmitted to any civilization considering contact with Earth. Approach with extreme caution. Species displays irrational resistance behaviors. Conventional conquest methods can recommend observation only. Some humans saw this as insult. Being labeled irrational and unpredictable seemed degrading, but others understood the deeper meaning. The most advanced civilization in the known galaxy had studied humanity and concluded that they could not be conquered through conventional means. They had looked at human history, at wars fought for love and honor and revenge. They had observed humans sacrificing themselves for strangers and ideas and futures they would never see. They had watched a species that knew it was doomed choose defiance over submission, and they had decided that dealing with such creatures was too dangerous to attempt. 50 years after the invasion, humanity launched its first interstellar vessel. The ship was named Defiance. Constructed using technology reverse-engineered from captured alien components and enhanced by human innovation. Its mission was exploration and contact. Its crew represented every nation on Earth. Dr. Raj Patel, now elderly but still brilliant, watched the launch from the same laboratory where he had developed the quantum disruption device. He had spent his remaining years ensuring humanity would never be caught unprepared again. Defensive systems now orbited Earth. Warning networks monitored nearby space. Research continued on alien biology and physics. They thought they were harvesting us, he said to the students who had gathered to watch history being made. They thought we were just another species to be catalogued and preserved. They could not imagine that we would fight back, that we would refuse their version of mercy. He smiled as the defiance disappeared into the darkness of space. They understand now. The galaxy understands. Humanity is not a species to be processed. We are a species to be reckoned with. The stars that had once seemed so threatening now represented possibility. Other civilizations existed out there. Some might be friendly, some might be hostile, but all of them would eventually learn what the first invaders had discovered. Humans were stubborn. Humans were irrational. Humans refused to accept mathematical reality when that reality conflicted with their values, and that made them the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered, not because they were the strongest, not because they were the smartest, but because they would never, ever surrender. The alien fleet had arrived expecting easy conquest. They had identified humanity as primitive and weak. They had calculated victory with absolute certainty. They had been wrong about everything. And as humanity reached for the stars, as they prepared to take their place among galactic civilizations, they carried that lesson with them, the lesson that had been written in blood and sacrifice and defiance. Being human meant refusing to accept defeat, even when defeat was certain. It meant fighting for tomorrow even when tomorrow seemed impossible. It meant choosing hope over logic and courage over calculation. The aliens had come to process a primitive species. They had discovered something far more dangerous instead. That discovered humanity in the galaxy would never be the same.